If you have a company or bank account in the Cayman Islands, listen carefully for the next 3 minutes. On the 18th of September 2026, two major anti-money laundering rules issued by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, or CIMA, will officially come into effect. From that day forward, Cayman compliance is no longer something you are simply encouraged to follow. It becomes something you must comply with. And even if these new rules do not directly apply to your company, your bank account will almost certainly feel the impact. Let's start with the biggest change. Previously, Cayman's AML framework had 3 layers: legislation, regulations, and a 2-4-5-page guidance document. That guidance was widely used, but technically it was only a reference. Now, CIMA is taking the key obligation from that guidance and upgrading them into legally enforceable regulatory rules. Before, if a bank failed to follow certain procedures, it might only receive a warning. Now, it could face regulatory penalties, including fines. There are 2 sets of new rules, and each focuses on a different area. The first is the Rule on Effective Compliance Procedures. It requires every financial institution to build a fully documented AML compliance system, not just a compliance policy sitting on a shelf. At the governance level, every institution must appoint an anti-money laundering compliance officer and a money laundering reporting officer. They must be real individuals, part of management, and clearly responsible when problems occur. Risk assessments must also be documented in writing. And whenever there are major changes, such as mergers and acquisitions, new products, or geopolitical risks, the risk assessment must be updated immediately. Employee training becomes mandatory as well. All staff must receive AML training at least once every year. But the most important change is this: independent audits. High-risk institutions will generally need independent reviews about every 2 years, while medium-risk institutions will need them about every 3 years. Internal audits cannot continue forever. After 2 consecutive cycles, institutions must bring in an external auditor, and the audit reports must be submitted to CIMA for record keeping. Banks can no longer simply check themselves behind closed doors. The second rule focuses on financial sanctions compliance. It transforms sanctions screening from a best practice into a legal requirement. Financial institutions must continuously screen customers, beneficial owners, and every transaction. This includes multiple sanctions regimes, such as those from the United Kingdom, the United Nations, and the United States. If a match is identified, assets must be frozen without delay. Countries or regions subject to sanctions also cannot simply be classified as low risk. This closes the door on using risk ratings to avoid stricter controls. So why is Cayman making these changes now? Because in 2027, the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force will conduct its 5th round mutual evaluation of Cayman. This is a major compliance test. Failure could potentially lead to increased scrutiny, including the risk of being placed on a gray list. By introducing these rules ahead of time, Cayman is sending a clear message. Our regulatory system is ready. And this is not a temporary campaign. It marks the beginning of a long-term global trend towards stricter offshore compliance. Now you may ask, my company is not a bank. Why should I care? Because your bank is exactly the type of institution directly affected by these rules. Banks will face higher legal obligations, and that pressure will flow down to their customers through account opening and annual reviews. There are 3 major impacts. First, opening new accounts will become harder. Banks will conduct deeper checks on beneficial ownership records, economic substance filings, audit reports, notarized documents, and ultimate